Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 247. Now, it's taken us 20 minutes to hit record on this podcast. We have not spoke to each other for quite some time. You have never listened to this man on the podcast. You've probably never seen me talk to him online. But we've known each other for quite a long time, very much in the early days of our fitness career. He was sort of slightly around the scene before I was, and then I sort of jumped in there, and then we sort of did some high fives, and then the whole time he was far better looking than me, had a far better rig than me, has basically made it more than I have, but I still talk a good game, so I'm still in there. Mr. Ross Edgley, hello.
That's the best introduction I'm ever going to get. We should just stop it there. That was amazing.
I can do that. It's nearly my bedtime.
You legend. It has, but we were just chatting, wasn't it? It's been, 10 years we've known each other? About 10 years?
No, it's not. I'm not that old, mate. I would have been sniffing around your neck of the woods around 2009.
Okay, we're coming up to a decade. We should do something to celebrate our decade anniversary.
Yeah, you can take me out to dinner.
Done.
Or throw me a party.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure something else, but I'll make myself available. In the diary.
Mate.
So, just to give people a little bit of background, one of the first companies that I ended up being around in the early part of my career was My Protein, when My Protein were doing, granted some great things in the fitness industry and kind of pioneering a lot of different ways to look at things, and I ended up writing for them and stuff like that, and Ross was also doing some work for them at the time, and that's how we got to meet each other, which was at Body Power, which is the first time I ever visited Body Power to go and say hello. And here we are today. You run around largely with your clothes off on Instagram, doing mad fitness challenges, trying to beat the status quo, and I'm sat at home with my dog talking a lot on a self-proclaimed radio show. So Ross, I should give you the chance to tell everyone who's Ross Edgley and what do you do?
You're such a legend. That's it. I think you said it best. I run around semi-naked, challenging. You said it best then. Challenging the status quo. I think one thing that I love doing. So Loughborough sports science background, and since graduating, I've kind of decided to try and challenge what a lot of people thought wasn't possible, with the human body pushing the boundaries of physical excellence and just really challenging a lot of things. So sort of January last year was crazy. I ended up running a marathon, pulling a car. So the car was 1.4 tons, ran 26.2 miles around Silverstone race circuit, all because, long weird story short, Robert Hickson, quite a famous sports scientist, looked at what is called concurrent training and basically said that strength and stamina cannot coexist optimally. He came up with this theory of concurrent training, which is rooted in molecular biology, and he stated that, if you train for stamina and you train for strength in one single session, neither is going to be optimal. So if you try and run a marathon and then run in the gym and then try and put up your 1 rep max on deadlift, neither of them are going to be optimal. You dilute the potency of the stimuli, is what he said. Whereas I was doing quite a lot of work at the time with Jeff Capes, former World's Strongest Man twice, and he was kind of like, well, no, he was a really good cross country runner. He was a basketball player, as well as a shot putter, as well as a great powerlifter, as well as the World's Strongest Man. And not enough people sort of realised that. So we got chatting one day over a barbecue, and this idea kind of came about. Whereas it was like, can you run a marathon pulling a car, fusing strength and stamina? And that's what we did. That was January. Then I climbed a rope, the height of Everest. So 8.848 meters. It took me 19 hours. It's very boring. My hands have only just recovered really and forgiven me for that one. Again, exploring this idea of strength and stamina and work capacity. So that one was really work capacity, which is your body's ability to perform and positively tolerate training of a given intensity or duration. And I wanted to kind of prove that through arm conditioning routines of 12 hours plus, you could actually condition your arms to endure something like that, like climbing a rope the height of Everest. And then did a few other things, ran 1,000 miles barefoot with a marine backpack on. That was really good. Exploring barefoot biomechanics, which is this kind of forgotten. Yeah, 1,000 miles in a month. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a few miles.
It worked out because I started it late. It ended up being kind of like a marathon for breakfast and lunch. So with 50 kg on my back. So that was, it got boring.
You're
that
a
one.
Fucking lunatic, aren't you?
We did, it was. I regretted that. 4 days into announcing it on social media, I regretted it. But then you have to see it through, don't you? You know, if you say something on social media, you've got to do it.
Yeah, fortunately, I'm not like, I'm going to run 1,000 miles in a backpack. Like, nah. I just don't do it.
No. I've learned my lesson, Ben.
And then there was the triathlon.
Yeah, that was right. And then we did, I've always wanted to do a triathlon, but I just thought, at a dinner party, if you say I've done a triathlon, many people have done a triathlon. So I thought, well, look, I was doing a lot of work for Green Charity at the time. Why don't I do it with a 100-pound tree on my back? And we'll call it a triathlon. So that's what we did for the island of Nevis, which has plans to become the world's first carbon neutral island. Not enough people know about the island, tucked away in the Caribbean, beautiful people, the scenery, it's amazing. And I just thought, look, if a strange dude running around with a tree on his back, fusing strength, stamina, work capacity, barefoot biomechanics, nutrigenomics, and everything that I'd learned, if it brings attention to Nevis, then it will be a good thing. So we did that in November, and that was cool. It was hot and hard, but it was good.
I bet. So when you flicked through the Virgin magazine and saw the fact that it was £600 to go on holiday now, and it's now £2,000 to go on holiday there, it's your fault.
Yeah, essentially.
Awesome. Ross Edgley making holidays expensive for everyone.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, mate. So let's dive in this concurrent training topic and actually give the listeners less of our banter, because we think we're funny, they don't. Concurrent training, so pulling a car around a track.
Yeah.
Are you telling me, so you said that the two can't coexist optimally. Are you saying that you felt you ran around the track at an optimal pace, like a max pace, while pilling? Because what I'm trying to get at is how are you quantifying the fact that you did both maximally at the same time, which was kind of what you said you were out to prove that you can do. But if I really wanted to, and I'm not going to do this, everyone. I'm not putting it out there on social media and setting myself up. If I pulled a car around a track, I'd probably be able to do it, but really, really slowly. It's not going to be optimal. So how are you sort of proving with what you did that actually both can coexist and be optimal?
Good question. So I think by optimal, it's kind of like if you took a very, very, very good marathon runner and told him to try and run a mile with a car, would he possess the strength capable to do it? Right. And the answer might be no, if they're built like, Mo Farah. With respect to Mo Farah, I don't know if he could pull 1.4 tons. But then equally, you take some powerlifters and get them to run even without a car, and they might not necessarily be able to do it. So sort of removing the word optimally, but looking at just like, can they coexist? Can the two, do people, these strength athletes who run in fear that if they do any cardio, it will eat into their gains. Those people who are just like, but then you've also got the endurance athletes who don't want to step foot in a squat rack in fear that their like quads just completely blow up and they'll be unable to run. And so it was really looking at like, can the two coexist? So taking what Robert Hickson said, saying like you can't do them optimally, because he said you dilute the potency of the stimuli, that cellular signal that you're sending to your cells. Now, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I do, and I'm a big believer that when you go into the gym, said principle, specific adaptation to impose demands, that when you go into the gym, you have to be so clear. If in a sentence you can't say what you're training that day, it's too diluted. So if you walked into the gym, Ben, and I was like, mate, what are you doing today? And you said, hitting some heavy deadlifts, generating force. I'll be like, cool, strength. That's what you're doing, functional strength, not structural, not bodybuilding, functional strength. That's what you're building in a sentence. But those people who sort of say, I'm gonna run on the treadmill, and then I've seen someone's bicep curling over there, but then I want to go and do some Olympic lifts. It's like whoa. Olympic lifts, rate of force development, speed. You just talked about endurance over here, and then you go in bodybuilding because you said bicep curls, so hypertrophy. But your body's like, well, which one do you want us to adapt to? So that's on a cellular level. But what I was basically putting forward and theorizing is that when you consider the body in its powerful entirety, looking at a cellular signal is sometimes quite close-minded. We're compartmentalizing things that aren't compartmentalized in nature. So, okay, fine. You're diluting the potency of that stimulate. On a cellular level, that's diluted. But what about capillary density? What about you start improving capillary density, all of a sudden even strength training protocols like German volume training, that becomes easier. Your time to recover between sets, that's easier. Capillary density is improved, and your body's ability to actually deliver oxygen, nutrients and blood to the working muscles during strength training improved. So that's what we were basically trying to get at, that it's, yes, Robert Hickson, absolutely, tip of the cap to you, sir, completely agree with you. When looking at molecular biology, you're right over here. So it's kind of saying, yes, you're right. But over here, have you considered the body in its entirety? And that's what I believe happened with people like Jeff Capes. It wasn't quantified, he wasn't studied. But when you look at someone like Jeff Capes, it's like that. How do you explain a specimen? Yeah, a genetic advantage, but also, was it because he was just kind of adapting in a way that you can't really study under a microscope? Does that make sense? That was a long-winded answer.
No, totally. So how did you train for it? How did you train for endurance? So,
like I said, it's definitely tip of the cap to you, Robert Hickson. I understand that to improve stamina, there should be sessions where the sole goal is on stamina. And yes, when it's strength, the sole goal should be strength. But what was really interesting is going back to that SAID principle, so the specific adaptation to impose demands, all it means is practice whatever you want to be better at. I think it's, for instance, before I started running with a car on my back, I had a decent marathon time. It was okay. But the biomechanics, like the gait analysis, energy pathways, you'll understand this better than anyone, Ben, but actually like nutritional approach, all changed as soon as you put a car on your back. It's no longer a marathon. It's not running a marathon. It's completely different. It's a completely different sport. Time to fatigue increased. Lactic threshold completely increased. Depleting muscle glycogen happened, they say 17, 21 mile mark, depending on how big, how much muscle glycogen you can hold. Then you hit the wall. Well, with a car on your back, hitting the wall, that happens a lot sooner. So it's like, it was amazing taking this new sport and almost performing like an autopsy on it. And that's what I got such a kick out of. We started chatting to people much like yourself and started speaking to experts going, how would you approach this? And if I had this conversation with you, you would have, of course, sat down and gone, okay, muscle glycogen. Okay, what are your fat stores like? Where are you getting energy from? Are you looking at fats? If you're looking at fats, are you looking at MCTs, medium chain triglycerides that are basically transferred into adenosine triphosphate? The molecular energy in the muscle is far more efficient than other fats, and you start going down that rabbit hole. Then you start looking at the carbohydrates, and are you carb loading? Are you traditionally carb loading like so many marathon runners, or is there a way to do that intra, because you're going to get depleted so much sooner? You see what I mean? So it was. Sorry, I've had a lot of green tea, Ben. So it's just, but it's basically, how did I train for it? I looked at it and started to dissect it in every which way. Looking at core strength, I was training with Andy Bolton, first guy to deadlift 1,000 pounds. For back and core strength, there's not really many people that much stronger. And it was kind of like Andy, I remember the very first 5 mile car pull, legs were okay, calves were in pieces a little bit. My Achilles was like, what are you doing? But it was actually my core that started to give up. So that was the weakest part of the chain. So me and Andy caught up, and we developed a routine that would really sort of strengthen the core, that kind of isometric stabilizing, putting me in that position for what was 19 hours, 36 minutes, I think.
Wow.
Sorry, that was a long answer, Ben.
No, I meant pulling a car for 19 hours.
Right.
Not worried about how long your answer is. Say what you want, man. You're the guest. You make the rules. In fact, that's a lie, Ross. I make the rules. So, what I suppose we've gone over so much of what you've kind of done on a physical level, and I've talked about this. I can't remember who on the podcast a while back, but basically challenging the body. And I've always said, if I ever stop playing rugby, at the moment rugby's still my challenge and it's still something I enjoy. If I stopped it, I would go and do CrossFit, or I'd sign up to a mad challenge. I quite enjoy mud runs, which I know you've done in the past quite a bit. Big fan of that. I always try and implore people to just have some form of target, because it's just not quite enough a lot of the time for people to just say, well, I go to the gym to be healthy. Okay, cool, do that, but have a purpose behind that, whether it be strength, whether you want to be a bit bigger. We don't have to necessarily go down an obsessive rabbit hole about it, but it gives the body and the mind something to focus on each week.
Yeah, you're so right, Ben. And that's it. I think training by its very nature is an adaptation. So Hans Selye, 1936, law of adaptation. For those who don't know, Hans Selye coined the general adaptation syndrome, whereby he gave rats a little bit of poison and a little bit more and a little bit more, and he found that they developed an immunity to it. Whereas if he just gave those rats the massive lethal dose, they would keel over and die. Unfortunate story. But by giving them this little bit of... rest in peace. That was the general adaptation syndrome, and he basically turned around and he said, look, as humans or any real sort of organism adapts through stress and stimuli. That's what's needed. Too often now, I think people think, you can vibrate yourself fitter, or they can take a magic pill or various things like that. But then to your point, Ben, that stimuli has to be specific. It has to be. Otherwise, it's not really training. Now, there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with going for a run in the park or just a walk in the park if it's cathartic, if it clears your head, if it's got cognitive benefits, social benefits. But training has to be specific, and you're so right. That's what. Otherwise, it's just like you're setting sail out to sea without a compass, or you're just kind of just like randomly sailing. But as soon as you set a goal, and you're right, it doesn't have to be obsessive. But as soon as you set a goal, everything you then do in the gym is conducive to that goal. I want to get quicker. Brilliant. How are we doing that? Box jumps, plyometric training. Are you looking at your rate of force development on your deadlift? Is it just straight out sprints? Is it wind sprints? What are we doing? But as soon as you have that one goal, everything can become so much more focused. But to my point on concurrent training and Robert Hickson, like I said, too many people would just go into the gym and then they'll see their friend's bicep curl and they'll be like, oh, bicep curl with you. And then someone else is on the treadmill and they'll go do that over there. And it's just like they're just kind of floating around. It's like, no, have a goal, and watch how your body adapts.
So what's obvious here is you're doing a lot of training, and I'm always interested at balancing. I have a desire to train, and I kind of feel I know where my body's limit and ability is, let's say in a given amount of hours in a week before I'm just kind of crushed.
Yeah.
Where do you, being someone that's doing training a lot, being someone that's coached other people, where do you think that kind of, is there a rough limit? Because I know there's a lot of people that push the body hard and they should probably back off.
Yeah, Ben, you're so right. So you look at Matt Vayev's concept of periodization, and he was there saying, so periodization just essentially, deload week, and then you go harder. And there's this concept of systematically applying stress on the body. My only criticism of that, and it's also one that I share with John Keeley, a friend of mine who was the strength and conditioning coach at the English Institute of Sport during London 2012. And I love this. I'm going to try and remember it to do John justice. But he said, quite often we are trying to apply a simple mechanical solution to what is a complex biological reality. And what he means by that is we're always trying to put the human body in tables, pie charts, reps, repetitions. I always love as well when you look at the age-old repetition weight scheme. Verkhoshansky, one of the greatest ever strength and conditioning coaches, he looked at the repetition weight scheme and said that is fine for your average trainer, or your average personal trainer, or your average athlete, but we must think beyond this if we are to achieve our goals. Sorry, to come back round, what I mean by all of this is I think too often we are, too strictly looking at routines and regiments, various things, but what you touched upon, Ben, is so powerful. And that's just like actually listening to your own body. No coach, no personal trainer will be as good and as in tune with your body as you can be. And when you start to realize that, which I think only comes from years and years of training, you know your limit. You actually start to know that. The most successful people who ever do this, the Bulgarian Olympic lifting team. So you look at, granted, they were using recovery aids that weren't necessarily deemed legal, but they were also very honest and open about that. But when you look at like the Bulgarian Olympic lifting team, they were the first to say Matveyev's concept of periodization. No, doesn't matter. What we're going to do is you are going to lift heavy 8 hours a day to max 365 days of the year. You will go into the gym and you will try and get as many peaks as possible for those 12 hours. Now, they're not training all out for 12 hours, but what they'll go and try and use their training strength. So what I mean by training strength, different to competitive and absolute strength, they'll go in and they will try and make sure they're not overly aroused, certainly no pre-workouts, not even any music, just like completely calm. Go in, bang, stick, 200 kg snatch above their head. Drop the weight, chill out, go and get something to eat, maybe have a little bit of a nap in the corner. And they would do that and enter as many competitions as they could all the way throughout the year, 365 days of the year. And the concept is the only periodization that they had was their own intuition. So if they were like, hang on, today I know it says that I should lift heavy, but I'm just not feeling it. I can feel upper respiratory tract infection. I can feel myself just getting a little bit, my immune system struggling a little bit. So I'm going to ease off. But they were the one who was empowered to do this. And that was what the Bulgarian training system was founded upon, basically. It's like, you are your best expert. You absolutely, a coach can assist and help, but you have to empower yourself. And to your point, Ben, I think adaptation, going back to Hans Selye, stress and stimuli, yes, you have to stress the body, but there becomes a point when you just go, whoa, I'm going to ease up. And again, Verkhoshansky called it adaptive energy. So the law of adaptation, it was basically just saying, do you have a lot of adaptive energy? If you wake up in the morning and you're just like, yeah, I feel awesome, I'm gonna go and smash half a marathon, I'm going to record and see how I feel. You've got a lot of adaptive energy. It's as simple as that. Whereas if you use that adaptive energy and you go for it, you will adapt. But there'll be other sessions where you drag yourself out of bed and you're like, I'm really not feeling it today. Adaptive energy is low, and identify that and don't go completely balls to the wall on whatever sort of training you're doing. Still train, drill some mobility, drill some technique, but certainly don't go all out. Yeah. Sorry, that was another long answer.
Well, I agree, and I'm doing the same over the next couple of days. I feel a little bit meh. I just don't really want to train, so I'm not training. But the problem is a lot of people aren't in a place where they're looking after their sleep properly. They are mentally in a good place. They're physically in a good place. And I just say from keeping up with mobility. So actually the body is in a readiness and a state to train because it's already mobile and they don't have to do 45 minutes of mobility before they decide to squat and stuff. So I think I 100% appreciate what you're saying, but the mass are not in a place to kind of control that. So how do we bridge that gap?
I think they are. I think everyone should be empowered a little bit. I mean, there's people who I've trained who are completely sedentary, so they've done nothing. And, you talk about that intuition, but sometimes it's just empowering them. And when you start asking questions, because you're right, you can start taking like white blood cell counts. You can start looking at everything, lactic threshold, have they recovered? You can start having blood tests, all sorts of things. But sometimes I do believe it's even more intricate than that. So it's just like you said, those days where you're just feeling a bit like, nah, it might be neurotransmitters, the chemical signals in the brain that just aren't firing, and that's not going to show up in any blood test.
I'll tell you what then, I'm probably a little bit blinded, because if we take normal population, in fact, I would probably agree with you. If I think about some of the people I know, like some of the people I play rugby with, if they're not feeling it, they'll be like, not going to go to the gym today, I'll go tomorrow. Whereas if we take the fitness industry, for me, totally different. Fitness industry, there is quite often a certain level of anxiety over why people do fitness. There's a lot of people that are, doing kind of bodybuilding type training for very aesthetic reasons, and they're, I think, afraid that if they don't do chest on a Monday or whatever, then it's like, shit, like, what do I do? Like, the program says this, I might lose all my gains, all that kind of stuff. And this is where I've been teaching in, some recent seminars I've been doing, is that this is where we need to appreciate the science of training and nutrition. So I am not going to train for a couple of days. The only thing I'm really going to do different is I'm going to try and increase my total daily energy expenditure a little by walking a little bit more and moving a little bit more. And the other thing I'm going to do is just eat a little bit less. I'm not training, so I'm going to eat a little bit less. But most people are like, well, if I don't train, I'm going to get fat or I'm going to lose my gains. It's like, no, just eat a little bit less, look after your body, and when you're ready, go again.
Yeah. You're so right, and it's not even fitness. I mean, one of my favourite authors, Nassim Taleb, a famous economist, and he came up with the Black Swan theory. And there's a quote that I always love of his, and he's, as humans facing limited knowledge, always resort to prescribed ideas and narratives. So that, what I mean by that is those people that you've just described, those ones who are worried if they don't hit chest on a Monday, they're going to lose their gains. They have that limited knowledge that Nassim Taleb was talking about. Now, Nassim Taleb wasn't talking about the fitness industry. He was talking about, humans in general. But when you face limited knowledge, you do resort to these prescribed ideas and narratives. And you're so right. So when you don't have the knowledge, you and I'm not just saying it, Ben, I'm a huge fan of yours. And for you, it's just intuitive. You just get it, and the one thing that I love about you, and genuinely, you have a way of just breaking things down very logically. As you just said it just then, it's just like, oh, yeah, laws of thermodynamics do apply to us. Maybe just ease up on the food and just increase my calorie expenditure. And that's it. You're so right. But some people don't have that, and they're not as comfortable or as confident as you, so they will start to look elsewhere for diet plans or comfort blankets. That's what they're looking for, and those comfort blankets sometimes come from just trying to rigidly follow a routine. So you're 100% right. You're 100% right, and I think it's a challenge to try and get the fitness industry thinking outside of that. To Nassim Taleb's point, when you have limited knowledge, you resort to prescribed ideas and narratives. But when you have no knowledge, sometimes you're like, I'll just blindly follow stuff, which is sometimes better, than thinking, There's that old saying, isn't there? And I hope I get this right. It's something like, an undergraduate knows nothing, a graduate thinks they know everything, but a PhD knows they know nothing. And it's just, I certainly went through that. I went to Loughborough Uni and I turned up going, I am going to learn everything. I graduated and was like, I know everything. And as we were just saying just before, Socrates, the only thing I know is I know nothing. And he was, your ultimate epistemocrat. He used to say, hold wisdom, including your own, in such suspicion. Question everything, because that's the best that we can sometimes do. So if you're afraid to miss chest on a Monday, ask yourself why. You know, I think that's the best we can do.
Mm.
Long answer again, sorry.
No, it's good. Do you know what? And it's about shifting how you view things. So, like, I would have liked to have trained today because I enjoy training, but there's a part of me that's looking forward to the fact that soon I'm going to feel 100%. And rather going into the gym and train at 80%, I can soon go into the gym at 100% and feel that, like, feel my potential again. And I raise this point so much when I talk to people because I say to them, when's the last time you trained in the gym and you felt 100%? Honestly, go on, tell me. And they're like, well, I'll be honest, like quite a while. And I'm like, okay, take a break. Take 3, 4, 5 days, take a week off, and then come back on Monday and feel that again. And it's because we get caught up in the next thing. Like we do a 3-4 week plan, and then we don't take a rest. We go on to the next 3 or 4 week plan. Then we go on to the next 3 or 4. And all of a sudden, you haven't periodized anything. You just jump from one program to the next. And like you've said, the body just needs a chance to go, should we adapt to that?
Yeah. And to that point as well, there's always something you can adapt. You know, so, but that's one thing that I found with that 1,000 miles that I ran barefoot. So when people were looking at me completely gone out, because I was running around Cheshire with no shoes on, sometimes really slow. So I was running so slow to begin with that people were like looking at me going, he's not really, that's not high intensity. So he's not really tapping into his anaerobic threshold in any single way. It's not really low intensity, so he's not even doing aerobic training because his heart rate is barely getting over his resting. But what people didn't see is because I had no shoes on, the adaptation that I had in mind that day was ligaments, tendons, forefoot striking, and regaining that biofeedback and forgotten physiology in my Achilles heel. You know, so people would just be like, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's the adaptation that I'm doing that day. There's always something you can adapt. Now, that's a bit weird. That's a bit left field. I'm not saying everyone does that. But mobility, you know, so again, that takes no adaptive energy. To go back to Verkhoshansky, not really. You know, if you just are sitting down, put a movie on, it's like, what are you training that day? So when sometimes if you say to people, take a week off, take a day off, they go, what? You know, and they just think, oh my God. It's like, well, no, fine. Let's not use the term day off. Let's say, let's switch what adaptation you're actually chasing. Yeah, and that's one thing that I was doing out in the Caribbean with a lot of people when they said, you know, what are we training today? What are we training? Because they loved the weights that we did yesterday, strength training, and then we did Olympic lifting, rate of force development, speed work, technique. They loved that. And then one morning we woke up and I just went, give me your shoes. They were like, what? I was like, give me your shoes. We're going for a run on the beach. And it woke up ligaments and tendons and everything in their feet that they'd completely forgotten about. And the very next day, after we started to do some hill sprints on the sand dunes, their calves and their Achilles were killing them. And the next day, they weren't breathing heavy. Their immune system was absolutely fine. They were recovered and they could do a great upper body workout. But their feet knew about it. And that was the adaptation. And for the first time, the penny sort of dropped and they were like, oh, okay, that's what adapted. So yeah, to your point, sometimes to people, it's like, okay, fine, let's not take a day off. If you don't want to take a day off, that's fine. Let's look at something else. I was going to go down another rabbit hole then, but I stopped myself.
I'm actually going to stop the podcast there, only because I like to keep it a bit tight at 30 minutes.
I'm looking at the time. I can't believe we've already gone on.
I know. So, and there's already things that I'd had written down. So it'd be wicked if we could do a part 2 sometime. You know, maybe in a couple of weeks when you know when you finish whatever you're doing and why you put on that pink bandana. Most of the people will be listening to audio, so they won't see half of the dynamics we've got going on. But he looks like a what do you call it?
You called me a Skittle earlier.
No, you look like, what are those lollipops where they've got 5 different colours on them?
Oh, I know, like
fruit pastel. Fruit pastel lollipop.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, you look like a fruit pastel lollipop.
I'll get another one. I feel.
No, dude, I love you. It's beautiful. I'm just taking a piss.
You're such a legend. I'm going to get another headband now for the part 2.
I'm
People can tune in.
literally just abusing my power as the co-host. Otherwise, I'm sure the tables would be reversed. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You prepared a little link for the people that were listening. So if you go into the show notes, if you click I on the iTunes app or Podbean or whatever you're using, you can get a link to click to Ross's email subscription and you'll get some free stuff because Ross likes giving out free stuff. Also, follow Ross on his social media. I'll be honest, Ross, you have probably the best rig in fitness.
You're such a legend.
No.
I will claim that. If coming from you, that's
Mate,
big.
I've thought this for years. I think you have the best rig in fitness. Athletic, muscle mass. I'm only saying it because I'm wholly jealous. I wasn't dealt the genetic card. I've got my dad's calves. My brother's got my dad's calves. We regularly, get this, we regularly measure each other's calves to see who has taken over each other. And it's literally, we're arguing about a millimetre.
But who's winning right now?
Well, we don't train them, so no one's but like on basically a good day, I'll have won, and on a bad day, he'll have won, and it's just funny. The genetics aren't there. I'm doing the best that I can, but like just follow. Look, Ross has some great information on training, science, provoking thought, and he's right. Ross challenges the status quo, and that's why I appreciate your stance in fitness. So Instagram, you're Ross Edgley on everything, aren't you?
I am, yes. Yeah. You're a gentleman. Oh, thanks, Ben. Mate, seriously, that means a lot coming from you. That really does.
That's Ross as in Edgley for people that might be thinking, how do you spell Edgley?
That's one of the few people to spell it right. Thank you.
It's only 6 flipping letters, mate.
People get it wrong. I don't know.
I can do words. I can't do numbers. So if your name was numerical, I would have struggled.
Oh, you're a legend. You're a legend.
Dude, thank you very much for coming on the show.
No, thank you, mate.
I would love to do a part 2 sometime and get into some of the nutrition stuff. Because we haven't been there today, and I did write down some stuff. I also want to dive down the caffeine rabbit hole because I know you've got an opinion on that, and I've got plenty of opinions on that. Ross, thank you very much for coming on the show. Click the link, get some freebies off Ross, follow him on social media. If you want to ask him a question, tag us in. When you see this go up on social media, have a chat with us. Tell us if you like the show. All that kind of love, let us know. Now, for anyone else that's wondering what's happening in the coming future, the BTN retreat dates are now live. Go to bodytypenutrition.co.uk, click on the retreat tab, come and train with us in Spain for a week, learn loads of stuff, do loads of cool stuff. My book is now on Kindle, on Amazon, and Beware the UAE, I'm coming to do a tour. Beware personal trainers in the UK, I'm starting my development series very soon. That is it. I'm out. Stay awesome. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 246. Now, listen in. You know I'm a massive fan of the